He thought he was about to fire someone, but instead, he found the most dedicated worker he'd ever met, and the heartbreaking reason behind it. Robert Sterling, a tall, white man whose success was built on 2 decades of ruthless expansion, always carried the conviction that he could walk into any of his 72 restaurants, take a single deep breath, and tell within 5 minutes whether things were headed toward disaster. He called it his gut check. But standing outside the Gilded Spoon, a flagship location in Chicago that generated nearly $4 million in revenue, at nearly 11 o'clock at night, the air was cold, and his gut was silent. The place wasn't failing yet, but it was unmistakably slipping, slow night by slow night. The customer comments were piling up, food took forever, waitress looked miserable, just not the quality we expect. Robert ran a hand over the stubble of the fake beard. It felt like dry tumbleweeds glued to his face. He hated the theatricality of the disguise the production crew insisted on, but he knew that without it, every employee would straighten up, smile falsely, and conceal the truth behind a polished facade. He pulled the hood of his intentionally shabby gray sweatshirt higher over his head, adjusting the tiny earpiece. His goal was simple: expose the rot, fire the weak link, and restore the brand's integrity. He was here to find out why one of his most profitable locations was beginning to stumble. When he stepped inside, the air was heavy with the lingering scent of wealth, roasted rosemary, expensive garlic butter, and that signature smoky note from the high-end lamb dish they served. The scent itself felt like a ghost. The dining room was silent, vast, and empty, with chairs stacked haphazardly on the linen-covered tables. Only a single, sickly yellow bulb above the bar still cast a glow, a pale reminder of the long, demanding day. Robert paused, inhaling slowly, trying to recalibrate his mind from CEO to low-level employee. "All right," he whispered to himself, his voice sounding dry in the echoing silence, "let's see what's truly happening here." This wasn't his first undercover shift, but the sheer silence of this particular kitchen felt different, amplified. Maybe it was the late hour. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was that nagging suspicion that something bigger was happening behind these walls. If you think this CEO is about to find something unexpected, hit that subscribe button right now to see the full outcome. He headed through the empty dining room and pushed open the swinging door to the kitchen. The massive stainless steel counters were clean, but not spotless. He noticed smears and a residue of grease near the fryer. Whoever had closed was rushing, clearly trying to get out quickly. A chaotic stack of aluminum sheet pans leaned precariously against the wall. He spotted a half-full container of diced onions sitting forgotten on the prep table. Sloppy close, he noted mentally, pulling out a small notepad to record the infraction. He checked the clipboard hanging near the walk-in freezer. The closing checklist had 3 signatures from hours earlier, all boxes meticulously checked. Everything looked frustratingly normal, in fact, too normal. Neat checkmarks were often used to cover up larger, hidden issues. He moved farther into the back of the kitchen, past the dormant stovetops and the industrial-sized mixer, and paused, listening. Nothing. Not even the hum of the ventilation system. Then, faint and rhythmic, he heard it: tap, tap, tap. He tilted his head. It sounded exactly like a knife hitting a wooden cutting board, but no one, absolutely no one, was supposed to be here past closing, except the manager who locked up and left. Robert double-checked his watch. It was 11 p.m., heading quickly toward midnight. Tap, tap, tap. There it was again, a controlled, almost muted rhythm, as if the person making the sound knew they shouldn't be heard. He followed the sound, weaving past towers of stock shelves and toward a small, dimly lit prep room tucked into the back corner. He stopped just short of the door, taking another quiet, deep breath, adjusting his internal persona. "Hello," he called out, trying to make his voice sound average and unassuming. "Is anyone still here?" No answer. Only the rhythmic tapping continued, slow and steady, refusing to break its pace. He moved closer, pushing the door open just a few inches. That's when he saw him. A single overhead bulb was on, throwing a harsh, lonely light, and standing directly under it, with his back partially turned, was a young man with deep brown skin, shoulders rigid with tension, his eyes fixed on the heap of vegetables he was efficiently breaking down. His movements were incredibly sharp, quick, and strangely quiet for someone wielding a large chef's knife. Robert blinked, recognizing him from the employee file photos he'd skimmed. Marcus Davis, prep cook, 23 years old, hired 6 months ago. Mostly evening shifts. Why, in God's name, was he on earth still here, well past 11 p.m.? Robert stepped fully into the doorway, allowing the faint light from the main kitchen to frame him. "Hey," he said, trying to project clumsy curiosity. "Didn't mean to startle you. You're here mighty late." Marcus flinched just slightly, the knife pausing mid-slice before he visibly relaxed his tense shoulders. Yeah, sorry. Just trying to catch up on some things," he mumbled. Robert watched him for a full minute. The chopping resumed instantly, never missing a beat. "Mind if I ask what things?" Marcus hesitated, his gaze still on the board. "Prep work. I don't like leaving too much of a mess for the morning crew." Robert noted his tone. It wasn't pride, it was pure defense, as if explaining his work ethic was a shield against reprimand. Robert offered a small, awkward smile beneath the scratchy fake beard. "I'm new. They've got me training on night logistics. Name's Alex. The manager told me to float and observe." Marcus glanced at him briefly. His eyes were heavy, tired in a way that didn't just come from a long shift, but from something much more exhausting. "Nice to meet you," Marcus said, the words clipped. "I'm Marcus." Robert nodded toward the cutting board. "You always do prep this late?" There was that telltale flicker of hesitation again, small but deeply obvious. Marcus looked back down at his work. "Just sometimes. Depends on the shift needs." Robert didn't push. Not yet. He just gave a light nod and leaned against the wall, trying to project curiosity rather than suspicion, watching every movement of the young, exhausted man. "We want to know, where are you watching this story unfold from? Let us know in the comments below." This tiny moment, Robert knew, was about to crack open everything. Robert hadn't planned on sticking around longer than 5 minutes, but watching Marcus's desperate focus was like watching a spring coil tighter and tighter. He stepped farther into the room, pretending to examine the industrial shelving like a clueless new hire, but secretly observing every detail. The air was sharp with the smell of raw vegetables, and the single radio on the back shelf played low static. Marcus sliced through red bell peppers with smooth, almost unnaturally controlled motions, precise, efficient, clearly the work of someone who had logged thousands of hours. Robert cleared his throat. "So, who usually closes around here?" "I wasn't sure where to clock out." Marcus didn't look up, his focus absolute. "Jason usually does. He left earlier, around 10:30. Said he wasn't feeling too great." Robert frowned internally. The log he'd seen was signed by Jason but dated nearly 2 hours earlier. "You didn't feel like heading out with him?" This time, Marcus paused for a full second, the knife motionless. "I had a little more to finish. I got behind on the root vegetables." Robert nodded slowly. "Looks like more than a little." Marcus didn't reply, just moved on to chop celery, but his movements began to falter. His fingers trembled slightly. His eyelids drooped. He didn't just look tired, he looked utterly worn down, hitting Robert with an unexpected jolt of human concern. Robert stepped closer. "Hey, how long have you been here today?" Marcus took a long moment to gather himself. "Came in around 5. Robert glanced at the wall clock. It was now well past midnight. 5 this afternoon. "So, you've been here 7 hours already." 12, Marcus corrected quietly. "I started early, around noon. Picked up a morning prep shift for someone who called out." 12 hours. Robert repeated, his voice low with disbelief. "And you're still going?" "That's against company policy, man." Marcus gave a small, weary shrug, refusing to look up. "Just keeping up. We were short-staffed." Robert struggled to stay in character. "Look, man, nobody else is here. You don't have to stay for my sake. If you're tired, you can chill. No one's checking this late." Marcus shook his head sharply. "It's fine. I have to finish." "It doesn't look fine. Your hands are shaking." That comment made Marcus freeze entirely. His knife was still. "I'm good," he muttered, but the conviction was gone. Robert studied him, the severe dark circles under his eyes, the thin, worn soles of his kitchen shoes, the apron tied twice because the straps were frayed. This was someone running on nothing but pure, desperate will. So, you live nearby? Robert asked, changing the subject to ease the pressure. About 15 minutes from here, in Pilsen. It's a bus and then a 20-minute walk. Robert leaned against the counter. You always work nights, mostly. You like it? Marcus let out a short, hollow exhale. It's quiet. I can get more done. Robert recognized that quiet. It wasn't peaceful, it was lonely, desperate. You only chose it when the alternative was worse. Robert stepped closer to the prep table. Mind if I help? 2 hands are faster than 1. Help with this? Marcus asked, his eyebrow arched in clear skepticism. Robert chuckled awkwardly. Yeah. How hard can it be? Show me the technique. Marcus gave another short, tired laugh, the sound grating. He handed Robert a spare knife, a heavy, well-used tool. Just try to keep your fingers attached. We don't want blood on the menu. They stood side by side, chopping. Robert was ridiculously slow and clumsy, compared to Marcus's flawless speed. After a couple of minutes of Robert butchering an onion, Marcus gently guided his hand, adjusting his grip until it was stable. Hold it like this, he instructed, his voice low. Don't choke the blade. You'll tire yourself out. His touch was gentle but profoundly tired, like even that small motion cost him energy he couldn't spare. What about you? Robert asked quietly, leaning in, their shared space now an intimate bubble in the vast kitchen. What's really keeping you here this late? Marcus stiffened instantly. I told you, just catching up. Robert nodded, but he knew that was only the surface. You told me what you were doing. I'm asking why you have to be here, Marcus. You look like you haven't slept properly in a month. Marcus shook his head, refusing to meet Robert's eye. I'm good. Robert could feel the wall going up. But before Robert could push any further, a subtle sound echoed from the back hallway, forcing both men to turn their heads. A faint, light scraping across the tile floor, like a small plastic box being dragged. Robert tensed a little. Marcus, though, went utterly still, not startled, but bracing, as if this were a routine he knew too well. Robert waited. Marcus swallowed hard and kept chopping, quicker now, as if the speed could somehow drown out the sound. You okay? Robert asked quietly. Yeah, just the wind, Marcus said, his voice flat. There's no wind inside a building, man, Robert replied, raising a skeptical eyebrow. Marcus didn't answer, he just cut faster, his knuckles white on the handle of the knife. Robert wiped his palms on his apron. Want me to check it out? I can go look. No, Marcus said sharply, then softened his voice. Sorry. It's not a big deal. The building makes noises sometimes. That told Robert everything. It was absolutely a big deal. He leaned on the prep table. Seriously, man, that's not nothing. Tell me what it is. Marcus closed his eyes for a second. It's fine. It's not dangerous. Robert waited, his silence demanding the truth. It's my sister, he finally said, the words barely audible over the sound of Robert's clumsy chopping. Robert stopped cutting instantly. Your sister? Here. Marcus, it's 1 a.m. Marcus nodded once, defeated. She's 10. Layla. She's in the dry storage room, wrapped in a blanket. Robert couldn't hide his shock. What? Why? This is a commercial kitchen. Marcus set his knife down gently, his hand suddenly too heavy to hold the tool. Because I couldn't leave her alone tonight. I had to take this extra shift, and she gets scared. That answer sat between them, heavy and raw. Robert felt a profound wave of guilt wash over him. This wasn't poor management, this was poverty and desperation. Can I meet her? Robert asked carefully. Marcus shook his head. She's sleeping. She had a really rough night. I don't usually bring her, but I didn't have anyone else tonight. The neighbor couldn't watch her. Robert nodded slowly. That must be incredibly difficult. Bringing a 10-year-old to work. Marcus shrugged. You do what you got to do to keep things together. Robert set his knife down and leaned on the counter. You always work this late? Yeah. The long shifts are necessary. Robert noticed the telltale container of cut fruit near Marcus's station: grapes, apple slices, little pieces of banana. Food for a child. Done quickly, hours ago. Hey, Robert said softly. You don't have to tell me, but, since your mom passed, you're taking care of her full time. Marcus didn't speak. He chopped slower, then stopped. I am, he said finally. I'm it. This wasn't the kind of confession people volunteered. You look like you haven't slept in days, Marcus. Marcus let out a breath that sounded like pure defeat. I sleep when I can. Usually after I drop her off at school in the morning, for a few hours. Does the school know what's going on at home? Robert asked. No, Marcus said quietly. Why not? Because they'd call child services. And if someone gets called, they'll split us up. They already threatened it once after my mom died, said I was too young, no income, no structure. I lied. I told them my uncle was moving in. Now I just have to keep proving I'm stable. You're her only family. I'm the only one who stayed, Marcus said. I'm the structure. Robert studied him, the slumped shoulders, the sheer youth of his face, hidden behind exhaustion. You're raising a kid while working 12, 13-hour shifts. I didn't have a choice. When my mom got sick, she couldn't work anymore. Bills piled up. I tried to keep up with school, but between taking care of her, my mom, and whatever minimum wage jobs I could get, something had to give. What gave? Robert asked softly. I left school. I was 16. Counselors told me college would still be there later. They were wrong. After my mom passed, I had to work. Full-time. I had to be a parent, not a student. I didn't have time to think about college anymore. Marcus rubbed his hands over his face, revealing the depth of the dark circles beneath his eyes. This place is the first real kitchen that actually gave me a chance to learn stuff, gave me hours. Robert nodded. You're good, Marcus. I mean that. I can tell you have talent. Doesn't matter if I'm good, Marcus said bitterly. I don't have the papers, no diploma, no fancy school. Nothing that proves I belong in a kitchen, only my talent. And the world doesn't pay you for talent without a piece of paper. You ever think about getting certified? Robert asked. Yeah, Marcus said. But those programs cost $3,000 and I'd have to take 2 months off work. I don't have either the money or the time to risk losing the job. Someday isn't soon enough, Marcus whispered. Does anyone help? Anyone at all? Marcus shook his head. No one. It's just me and Layla. Robert leaned against the counter. Look, you're doing everything you can. But you look like you're going to pass out. I don't have time to pass out, Marcus said, calmly, like it was a simple, logical fact of his life. Robert was about to offer him some legitimate food when a loud, definite thud echoed from the hallway, making Marcus jump to his feet like a spark had hit him. The thud was sharp, heavy, unmistakable. Marcus bolted toward the hallway, a frantic urgency replacing his exhaustion. Robert followed. They reached the storage room and Marcus pushed the door open. Inside, little Layla was sitting on the floor, her knees pulled tight to her chest. A metal bin lay on its side beside her, knocked over when she tried to stand. Hey, Marcus said, dropping instantly to his knees. You okay, baby? Layla nodded, but tears filled her eyes. I had a nightmare, Marcus. A bad one. Marcus pulled her into his chest. You're safe. I'm right here. Robert stayed by the door, watching the way Layla's tiny hands clung to her brother's apron like he was the only stable thing in her entire world. After a minute, Marcus stood up with her still holding on. Let's go back inside, he whispered. When they returned to the prep room, Marcus settled her on the stool. Why is he still here? Layla asked softly, noticing Robert. Robert offered a small, gentle smile. I'm helping your brother with the veggies. I'm slow, but I'm trying. Layla gave a tiny, sleepy smile. Marcus's worried expression deepened as he looked at Robert. He knew the questions were coming. Marcus, Robert said, lowering his voice. Earlier, you said you're always one bad week away from everything crashing. What did you mean? Marcus watched Layla finish her water. When my mom was sick, she lost her insurance first. We burned through her savings. After she died, the debt collectors came for the apartment. I kept changing jobs, always trying to stay ahead of the eviction notice. I bring Layla here because I need the hours, and if she's alone, she gets panic attacks. The social worker told me if I ever lose permanent housing, they will split us up automatically. Robert looked at the towel wrapped around Marcus's hand. And that injury? You told me it was a blister. Marcus hesitated, then pulled the towel off. A serious burn wrapped across his palm, red and blistered. Oil splash yesterday. I put a clean rag on it. I didn't go to urgent care. It costs too much. I need the money for next month's rent deposit. The raw, festering injury was shocking. Robert, the owner of a multi-million-dollar corporation, felt bile rise in his throat. This employee, one of the most dedicated he had, was risking permanent damage because he couldn't afford $50 for a clinic visit. Robert swallowed hard. You shouldn't have to carry all this by yourself, Marcus. Marcus shrugged. Who else is going to do it? It's the only job I have that pays me enough to afford Layla's medication. Robert stepped forward. Let me finish them. Go sit with your sister. You need to rest that hand. Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded and handed him the knife, a sign of deep, exhausted trust. As Robert chopped slowly, he kept watching them. Layla rested her head against her brother's arm, safe for now. When Robert finished the last pepper, he turned to Marcus. You know, you're not alone, even if it feels like it. Sometimes it feels like I'm failing her, Marcus admitted. You're not, Robert said firmly. You're doing more than most grown adults would ever do. Marcus, he said quietly. I need to tell you something. Marcus looked up, confused. What's up? Robert inhaled slowly, prepared to end the charade, but before he could reveal the truth, the front door of the restaurant opened, and heavy, definite footsteps echoed across the empty dining room, heading straight toward the kitchen. Both Robert and Marcus froze. Layla tightened her grip on her brother's sleeve. Marcus whispered, "Stay here," and moved instinctively in front of her. Robert stepped forward too, his heart pounding. This was his restaurant, his people, his responsibility, and he was about to lose control. The kitchen door swung open, and the shift manager, Jason, a stern-faced man in his mid-40s, stepped inside. He stopped mid-step, instantly taking in the scene, the white man in a hoodie, the black prep cook, and the terrified little girl on the stool. What in the world is going on here? He asked, his voice sharp and accusatory. Marcus tensed. Jason, she couldn't stay home alone. I brought her in. That's not what I asked, Marcus, Jason cut in, his voice rising. Why are you two still in the building at this hour? And who is this guy? We close hours ago. Robert kept his posture neutral. I'm Alex, new. They had me training on nights. We don't have any new hires on nights, Alex, Jason replied, stepping closer, his demeanor instantly hostile. This is unauthorized overtime and a liability nightmare. Robert saw the fear in Layla's eyes. He had watched enough. He had heard enough. He had seen enough. He stepped between them. Jason, he said evenly. I think we should slow down a bit. This is just an employee dealing with a family emergency. Jason scoffed, placing his hands on his hips. Slow down. Who are you to tell me to slow down? I'm the one who gets fired for unauthorized personnel and children in a professional kitchen. Robert pulled off the hood, then slowly, deliberately, he peeled off the ridiculous fake beard, letting it drop to the grimy floor. Stick around and hit that bell icon if you want to know what happens next. This reveal changes everything. Jason's eyes went wide, turning pale with immediate recognition and terror. Jason quickly retreated, pulling the prep room door shut behind him. Robert turned back to Marcus, who was now utterly defenseless, his expression a chaotic mix of exhaustion and dawning panic. Marcus, listen to me, Robert said, his voice dropping to a low, firm register. I know what you're thinking. You think I believe you were taking advantage of this place, using it as a shelter. I don't think that. I think you're trying to survive. And that is not the same thing as taking advantage. Marcus just stared at the floor, his shoulders hunched. I never wanted anyone to see us like this, he whispered. I didn't want your pity. This isn't pity, Marcus, Robert replied, pushing the stool a little closer. This is respect. Robert gestured toward the cutting board and the bandages on Marcus's hand. Do you know how many people would have walked away from your situation? How many would have quit, or said they were too young, too scared? You didn't walk away. You're here. You show up for every shift, you pick up every piece of slack, you don't complain. That is not something I see every day from people who are paid 3 times your salary. Layla's small hand slipped into her brother's. Marcus glanced down at her before whispering, I just want her to be okay. And she will be, Robert said. But not if you burn yourself out trying to do this alone. You told me you don't have a choice. You do now. Robert leaned forward, his eyes locked on Marcus's. Here's what's going to happen. I'm giving you a raise. A significant one. Effective immediately. Enough to take the pressure off. Enough so you don't have to work 13 hours just to keep the lights on and still have to worry about a $20 clinic visit. Marcus blinked rapidly, searching Robert's face for any sign of a lie or a joke. A raise. Not just that, Robert continued, refusing to let him process the first shock. I saw your file. I saw your aptitude tests. You have the raw talent of a true chef. You said you don't have the papers. We'll fix that. I'm moving you into our internal development program. It's usually reserved for management trainees, but you will get hands-on training, all the necessary certifications, and mentorship from my best culinary director. And you won't pay a cent. We will cover the tuition and keep you on salary while you train. Marcus just stared, his mouth slightly open, unable to form words. The debt, the pressure, the barrier that had kept him trapped, it was all dissolving right there on the dirty kitchen floor. And another thing, Robert said, his voice softening as he looked at Layla. We're arranging childcare support, not someone taking her away, I mean after-school help, counseling access, and a permanent, safe place for her to go until you are off work. You shouldn't have to drag her to a kitchen at 3 o'clock in the morning. Layla looked up, her eyes wide with sudden hope. I won't have to stay in the cold room anymore. Robert's voice softened even further. Not ever again, sweetheart. You are safe. I promise. Marcus covered his face with his unburned hand, his body shaking slightly. All the tension, the fear, the exhaustion, the fight, it slipped out of his shoulders in one slow, unsteady breath. I don't know what to say, he whispered, his voice thick. Say nothing, Robert replied. Just let us help. I know what it's like to feel like everything rests on you. And I know how fast one small setback can knock everything down. He paused. So, I'm also giving you something else, Marcus. A chance to breathe. People don't just do things like this, Marcus mumbled, shaking his head in complete disbelief. Not for people like me. People like you, Marcus. Robert stood up, his eyes meeting the young man's. You are not defined by where you started or what you didn't get a chance to finish. What matters is the kind of person you are, a protector, a hard worker, a devoted brother. Everything I saw tonight tells me you're exactly the kind of person this company needs. A single tear slipped down Marcus's cheek before he wiped it away quickly. Layla saw anyway and wrapped both arms around him, hugging him tight. I'll handle Jason, Robert said quietly. He's not the problem and he's not your judge. You two need to go home and rest. Tomorrow you meet with HR. I want everything set in motion immediately. Tomorrow? Marcus asked. Yes, Robert said. This starts now. Layla hopped off the stool, rubbing her eyes. Can we get pancakes? She asked her brother. Marcus laughed, a real, full laugh that Robert realized he'd never heard before. Yeah, we can get pancakes. He helped her into her jacket, and as they prepared to leave, he looked back at Robert one last time. Thank you, he said. For everything. Robert nodded. Just promise me one thing, Marcus. Anything. Don't give up on yourself. Marcus gave a small, emotional smile. I won't. He put his arm around his sister and guided her through the kitchen door. Robert watched them disappear into the hallway. The young man who'd been carrying the world and the little girl who'd kept him fighting. The door clicked softly shut behind them. Robert stood alone in the empty kitchen, surrounded by the late-night silence. But this time, it didn't feel heavy. It felt hopeful. Change wasn't just possible. It had already begun. He looked down at the cutting board, still covered in slivers of pepper and celery, the kind of mess left behind when someone works past their limits with no help, no support, no rest. Well, he murmured to himself, not anymore. He turned off the lights, locked the door, and stepped outside into the night, letting the cool air hit his face. There are moments in life when you see someone fighting battles they never asked for. Battles no one should face alone. And if you're lucky, you get the chance to step in. A chance to stand beside them. A chance to change their story. Robert had taken that chance. And now it was Marcus's turn to rise. When someone is drowning quietly, the right hand at the right moment can change everything. Sometimes people don't need judgment. They need someone to see them, someone to believe in them, someone to give them a chance they never got. If this story moved you, share it with someone who might need hope today. And if you ever meet a person fighting silently, take a moment to listen. You never know how much your support might